bicentennial Lincoln pennies, Indian head cents, and Canadian 1-cent coins that have caught the attention of collectors. Some may look dirty, worn, or completely ordinary, but the right date, variety, or error could make a huge difference. Watch all the way to the final coin because its story may Abraham Lincoln birth and early childhood in Kentucky 1 cent, another fascinating coin from the Lincoln bicentennial year. This example carries the 2009 date and D-mint mark and is described as having a large-looking date and a dirty, heavily aged appearance. To many people, a dirty modern penny might seem completely ordinary. But 2009 was not an ordinary year for Lincoln cents. The United States Mint created 4 special reverse designs to honor the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and the first design in that series tells the story of his earliest years in Kentucky. The 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial Program was created to recognize 2 important anniversaries.
It marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the 100th anniversary of the original Lincoln cent. The Mint divided Lincoln's life into 4 major chapters and represented each chapter with a different reverse design. The birth and early childhood in Kentucky design was the first of the 4 and represents the period from Lincoln's birth in 1809 through 1816. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in Kentucky. That humble beginning became one of the most famous childhood stories in American history. The reverse of this coin shows a log cabin representing Lincoln's birthplace and early life. The design gives the 1-cent coin a very different appearance from the traditional memorial reverse that collectors had seen for decades. The obverse still carries Victor David Brenner's familiar portrait of Lincoln facing right. The words, "In God We Trust," appear above the portrait. Liberty is placed to the left, and the date 2009 is on the right. Beneath the date is the D mint mark, identifying the Denver Mint. The portrait connects this modern bicentennial coin directly with the Lincoln cent design that began in 1909. The reverse shows the log cabin associated with Lincoln's birth and early childhood. Around the design are inscriptions including United States of America, E pluribus unum, 1 cent, and 1809, the year of Lincoln's birth. The simple cabin image is powerful because it represents how Lincoln's story began in modest circumstances before he eventually became President of the United States. The regular 2009 DE birth and early childhood cent had a very large mintage of approximately 350.4 million pieces. That means the normal circulation issue is not rare, simply because it represents Lincoln's birthplace. Millions were released into commerce, and many remain available today. However, collectors must distinguish the regular circulation strike from special 2009 satin finish issues. The satin finish cents were produced as part of the Mint's special uncirculated set program and had a much more limited production. That distinction is particularly important when examining a coin described as dirty. Dirt, dark toning, stains, and environmental discoloration are not automatically signs of rarity. A coin that has been stored in a damp location may become dark or dirty, while a coin that circulated for years can develop scratches and wear. Collectors generally do not pay a major premium for ordinary environmental damage. The important question is whether the coin has another feature that was created at the Mint. The description of a large date should also be treated carefully. The 2009 Lincoln cent does not normally become a major rarity simply because the digits appear larger than expected. Differences in strike, wear, photography, or comparison can make the date look unusual. Before claiming a rare, large date variety, collectors should compare the coin with documented varieties, and when necessary, seek professional attribution. Errors can make a different story. A genuine off-center strike, double design, wrong planche, broad strike, missing design element, or other recognized Mint error could potentially add a substantial premium. But the error must be genuine. A scratch through the date, a damaged Mint mark, or a groove created after the coin left the Mint is not equivalent to a Mint-made error. This is especially important with modern coins because their large production numbers mean that millions of pieces have experienced accidental damage. Coins have been dropped, scraped, squeezed in machines, exposed to chemicals, stored in dirty containers, and even altered intentionally. A professional examination can determine whether an unusual feature is connected to the manufacturing process or happened later. The historical importance of this first 2009 bicentennial design is one of its strongest attractions. The Mint chose the Kentucky log cabin to represent the beginning of Lincoln's life. It is a reminder that one of America's most important presidents came from a very modest background. Lincoln's childhood was shaped by frontier life, hard work, limited formal education, and constant movement. That story later became an important part of his public image. The coin also represents the beginning of a four-part visual biography. After Kentucky came Lincoln's formative years in Indiana, then his professional life in Illinois, and finally his presidency. By placing these four scenes on circulating cents, the Mint allowed millions of Americans to encounter different parts of Lincoln's life through ordinary money. The 2009 cents also have a special place in the history of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. The memorial design had been introduced in 1959 and remained on cents through 2008. In 2009, the Mint temporarily replaced it with four bicentennial designs. Then, in 2010, a new Union Shield reverse began. This makes the four 2009 designs one-year types and gives them a special place among modern Lincoln cents. Collectors are especially interested in completing the full 2009 set. A complete collection can include the four reverse designs from Philadelphia and Denver, along with special satin finish versions and other varieties. This creates several collecting possibilities from a single year. A person who finds one 2009 Lincoln cent may therefore want to check whether it belongs to the Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, or presidency design. The Denver mint mark is another important detail. The D confirms that this example was produced at the Denver Mint if the mark is genuine. Collectors often compare Philadelphia and Denver examples because both facilities produced the 2009 bicentennial designs. The mint mark can also help determine which version belongs in a particular collection. For the ordinary 2009 D birth and early childhood circulation strike, the large mintage means the coin is generally easy to locate. Current collector references and auction records show that normal examples are not remotely close to six-figure values. The special satin finish version is scarcer, but even certified satin finish examples have recorded auction prices in the low hundreds of dollars rather than hundreds of thousands. This is an important reality check for anyone researching these coins. However, if the coin we're discussing were discovered with a dramatic and authenticated mint error in addition to its historical design, the market could become much more interesting. For the purposes of this video, an exceptional hypothetical collector valuation could be placed around $587,500 for a unique, professionally certified specimen with an extraordinary mint-made error, outstanding provenance, and intense competition from specialized collectors. This is an exceptional hypothetical figure, not the normal value of a dirty 2009 D Kentucky cent. The difference between a normal coin and an extraordinary error is enormous. A dirty coin with no recognized error may have little premium. A certified coin with a unique production mistake could attract specialists from several areas of numismatics. That is why collectors should never determine value from appearance alone. The coin needs to be identified, examined, compared with known examples, and authenticated before a serious valuation is considered. If your 2009 D Lincoln cent is dirty, do not immediately clean it. Cleaning can create hairlines, remove original surfaces, and reduce collector appeal. Instead, look closely at the reverse design, check the D mint mark, examine the date, and compare the coin with photographs of known examples. If you believe the coin has doubling or another unusual feature, magnification can help reveal details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. That simple step can preserve evidence and help protect the coin's collector appeal. The 2009 birth and early childhood in Kentucky cent is fascinating because it captures the beginning of Lincoln's extraordinary life on a tiny piece of metal. The log cabin on the reverse represents his humble beginnings, while the portrait on the obverse reminds us of the leader he eventually became. The coin therefore tells a complete story in miniature, connecting Lincoln's childhood with the national symbol that his image became. For collectors, the coin also represents a moment of transition. It appeared during the final year of the old Lincoln Memorial era and formed part of a four-coin bicentennial program that would never be repeated in exactly the same way. That one-year status makes the 2009 designs important to modern Lincoln cent collectors, even though most individual examples are inexpensive. If you discover a 2009 D Kentucky cent that looks unusually large in the date, unusually dirty, or dramatically different from other pennies, do not assume it is automatically worth a fortune. First, identify the exact issue. Then check the finish, mint mark, design, weight, and possible error. If a genuine mint-made anomaly is found, professional authentication is the safest way to establish its importance. The most valuable lesson with this coin is that rarity has to be proven. A large mintage can make a normal coin common, while a rare error can make one individual piece extraordinary. A dirty surface does not create rarity, and a large-looking date does not automatically create a variety. What matters is what happened at the mint and whether collectors can document that difference. For the exceptional scenario described in this video, the hypothetical $580,500 valuation represents a unique and highly desirable error specimen rather than an ordinary circulated coin. Actual auction prices for normal examples are dramatically lower, and even the scarce satin finish versions generally trade at modest levels compared with major classic rarities. Collectors should therefore treat the six-figure figure as an extraordinary possibility only when supported by genuine authentication and an exceptional mint error. Still, that does not make the coin uninteresting. Quite the opposite. The 2009 Lincoln Birth and Early Childhood cent is one of the most meaningful modern Lincoln cents because it commemorates where Lincoln's story began. The small cabin shown on the reverse represents the first chapter of a life that eventually changed American history. And that is why this modern penny deserves a closer look. Before spending a 2009 Lincoln cent, check the reverse design. Look for the D mint mark, examine the date and surface, and determine whether you have the ordinary circulation version or a special satin finish issue. You may not discover a fortune, but you could discover an important piece of Lincoln history and a fascinating example from one of the most unusual years in modern United States coinage. Next up is the 1943 Canada 1 cent, a coin from the middle of the Second World War that offers collectors a fascinating look at Canadian history, wartime production, and the evolution of the country's small cent coinage. The example we're looking at today is described as having a large-looking date and a dirty, dark-colored appearance. At first glance, it may appear to be nothing more than a heavily circulated Canadian penny. But old coins can sometimes reveal important details when collectors examine the date, surfaces, design, metal, and overall condition carefully. The 1943 Canadian 1 cent was struck during a period when Canada was deeply involved in the war effort. Factories were producing military equipment, families were adapting to wartime conditions, and the economy was being shaped by the enormous demands of the conflict. Coins were part of everyday life, passing through shops, transportation systems, homes, and businesses, while the country experienced one of the most important periods of the 20th century. The obverse features the portrait of King George VI, who was the reigning British monarch during the period. His portrait faces left and is surrounded by the inscriptions associated with the Canadian cent. The date 1943 appears on the reverse design area, where collectors carefully examine the numerals for wear, damage, or unusual characteristics. Unlike United States cents, Canadian coins followed their own designs, inscriptions, and minting traditions, making this penny a distinct piece of North American numismatic history. The reverse of the 1943 Canadian 1 cent features the famous maple leaf design associated with Canadian cents of the period. The central maple leaf is surrounded by the denomination and country identification, creating an unmistakably Canadian appearance. The maple leaf has become one of the strongest symbols of Canadian identity, and seeing it on a coin from the wartime era gives collectors an immediate connection to the country's history. Approximately 89.1 million examples of the 1943 Canadian 1 cent were produced, so the date itself is not an extreme rarity. Millions entered circulation, and many survived. This is important when evaluating a worn or dirty example, because a large mintage means that ordinary pieces generally do not command extraordinary prices. The collector value must come from condition, variety, error, exceptional preservation, or another characteristic that separates the coin from normal examples. The dark or dirty color described on this coin can have several possible causes. Copper-based coins naturally change color over time as their surfaces react with air, moisture, handling, and storage conditions. A circulated Canadian cent can become brown, dark brown, or nearly black after many decades. Dirt can also collect around the lettering, maple leaf, rims, and other recessed areas. However, collectors make an important distinction between natural toning and damage caused by chemicals, cleaning, or harsh environmental conditions. A dirty appearance alone does not make a 1943 Canadian cent rare. In fact, heavy surface damage can lower the coin's desirability. Collectors normally prefer original surfaces and clear design details. A coin with attractive natural color and strong remaining detail may be more desirable than a heavily cleaned example. This is why cleaning an old penny can be a serious mistake. Once the original surface is removed or altered, the coin may become less appealing to collectors even if it looks brighter. The large date description also deserves careful attention. The 1943 Canadian cent is not generally valued simply because its date looks larger than another example. Differences in lighting, wear, strike quality, photography, and surface damage can make numerals appear different. A collector who believes the coin represents a recognized date variety should compare it with trusted Canadian coin references and, when appropriate, seek professional attribution. Collectors also search Canadian cents for genuine mint-made errors. These can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, doubled details, die cracks, broad strikes, and other production abnormalities. A true mint error must have originated during the manufacturing process. Scratches, dents, corrosion, stains, and damage caused by circulation are normally considered post-mint problems. The distinction is extremely important because a certified error can attract specialist attention while ordinary damage usually does not. The 1943 issue is particularly interesting because it was produced during wartime, when governments around the world were carefully managing materials and manufacturing resources. Every coin was part of a larger economic system. A tiny cent might have been used to buy an everyday item, returned as change, placed into a cash register, and then spent again. More than 80 years later, that same coin can provide collectors with a physical connection to the people and economy of wartime Canada. The portrait of King George VI also gives the coin historical importance. His reign covered the years of the Second World War, and his image appeared on Canadian coinage during a period of enormous political and social change. Collectors interested in world coins, British Commonwealth issues, Canadian history, or wartime coinage can therefore find the 1943 cent appealing even when the individual example is not especially rare. The maple leaf reverse adds another layer of identity. Canadian cents from this period are instantly recognizable because the maple leaf design communicates the country's national character in a very simple way. On a worn coin, some of the fine details may have disappeared, but the central maple leaf and denomination can often remain clear. This makes the 1943 cent easy for beginners to identify and interesting for collectors building date sets. For the example we're discussing, the dirty color and circulated condition would normally keep the market value relatively modest unless another unusual feature is confirmed. Current Canadian coin price references show that certified 1943 cents in ordinary mint state grades can sell for tens or a few $100s depending on grade and color, rather than hundreds of thousands. Recent auction listings also demonstrate that certification and condition can make a noticeable difference in the price. That means a normal circulated 1943 Canadian cent should not be described as a $600,000 coin. The date has a substantial mintage, and dirty surfaces alone do not create a major rarity. However, if a specific coin were discovered with an authenticated and extremely rare mint error, an unusual planchet, or another documented characteristic, its market position could be dramatically different. Exceptional error coins can attract specialist bidders because collectors are often willing to pay premiums for unusual pieces that are both genuine and well-documented. For the purposes of this video, if the featured 1943 Canadian cent were professionally authenticated as an extraordinary mint-made error with a dramatic and recognized production abnormality, we could discuss a hypothetical high-end collector valuation of around $575,000. This is an exceptional scenario and not the normal value of a dirty circulated 1943 Canadian cent. The coin would need to possess an extraordinarily rare feature, strong authentication, and intense competition from collectors before a figure anywhere near this level could become realistic. That distinction is important for anyone searching through old Canadian pennies. A headline number can create excitement, but responsible collecting requires evidence. The date, design, mintage, condition, error attribution, and certification all matter. A coin should never be valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars simply because it is old, dark, or described online as a rare, large-date example. If you believe your 1943 Canadian cent has something unusual, begin by examining both sides under good lighting. Look closely at the date, the maple leaf, the lettering, the rims, and the surface. Check whether the unusual feature appears to be part of the original metal or simply damage. Do not scratch, polish, or chemically clean the coin. If you suspect a genuine mint error, professional examination is the safest way to determine whether the feature is authentic. Collectors should also pay attention to color. Natural brown copper surfaces can be attractive, while artificially darkened or chemically altered surfaces may reduce collector interest. A coin that has been buried, stored in damp conditions, or exposed to chemicals may develop unusual colors that tell a story about its environment rather than its manufacturing process. Specialists therefore study the entire coin rather than relying on one visual feature. The historical setting makes this penny interesting. In 1943, Canada was contributing heavily to the Allied war effort. The country's factories, workers, transportation systems, and resources supported national mobilization. A 1-cent coin may seem insignificant compared with those events, but it was part of everyday life. Each surviving example is a small physical reminder of that era. The 1943 Canadian 1 cent is also a good example of why collectors should separate historical importance from rarity. A coin can be historically fascinating without being extremely rare. It can have a large mintage and still be enjoyable to collect. And when an unusual error appears on an otherwise common date, the error itself can become the reason for the coin's importance. This is one of the great attractions of Canadian coin collecting. You do not always need to begin with an expensive piece. Old cents can be affordable ways to explore Canadian history, monarchs, national symbols, wartime production, and changing minting technology. Over time, collectors learn to recognize the difference between ordinary circulation damage and genuine mint-made characteristics. For someone discovering a 1943 Canadian cent in an old collection, the first step should therefore be identification rather than excitement over a headline price. Confirm the date, examine the design, determine the condition, and investigate any unusual feature. If the coin turns out to be a normal circulated example, it can still be a wonderful historical collectible. If it contains a genuine error, then professional authentication can reveal whether it deserves a significant premium. The 1943 Canadian 1 cent may look like a simple dirty penny, but it represents a remarkable moment in Canadian history. Its King George VI portrait connects it to the wartime monarchy, its maple leaf reverse represents Canadian identity, and its production during the Second World War gives it a special historical setting. Even an ordinary example can be a fascinating piece of the past. And if an authentic mint-made error is discovered on one of these coins, the story becomes even more interesting. A tiny production mistake made at the mint more than 80 years ago could transform an otherwise common date into a specialist collectible. That is why experienced collectors never judge an old coin only by its color or condition. They look for evidence, compare details, and investigate every unusual feature before deciding what they have found. So if you have a 1943 Canadian 1 cent, take another look. Check the date, maple leaf, lettering, and surfaces without cleaning the coin. Most will remain ordinary collectibles, but the search is what makes coin collecting exciting. Sometimes small details reveal whether a coin is genuinely unusual. The 2009 Lincoln Memorial Bicentennial Presidency 1 cent, a modern Lincoln penny that became part of a very special year in American coin history. The example we're looking at today carries the 2009 date and D mint mark and is described as having a satin finish but a circulated, fine-condition appearance. At first glance, a coin from 2009 may seem far too recent to be considered a valuable collectible. Yet 2009 was an unusual year for the Lincoln cent, and certain special issues from that year were produced in surprisingly limited quantities. That makes this coin worth examining carefully before deciding that it is simply another modern penny. The year 2009 marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln cent. To celebrate those two important milestones, the United States Mint released 4 different reverse designs during the year. Each design represented a major chapter in Lincoln's life, beginning with his birth and early childhood in Kentucky, followed by his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, and finally his presidency. The presidency design therefore became the 4th and final chapter of the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial Cent program. The obverse continued to display the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with "In God We Trust" above his portrait, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 2009 on the right. On this example, the D beneath the date identifies the Denver Mint. Although the obverse looks familiar to anyone who has handled a Lincoln Memorial cent, the 2009 issue was special because it represented the final year of the Memorial reverse before the new Union Shield reverse began in 2010. The reverse of the presidency cent shows the partially restored United States Capitol building as it appeared during Lincoln's presidency. The design includes the inscriptions 1 cent, United States of America, and E pluribus unum. This final reverse was chosen to represent Lincoln's leadership during one of the most difficult periods in American history. The Civil War divided the nation, and Lincoln's presidency became closely connected with the preservation of the Union and the eventual end of slavery. The United States Mint explained that the unfinished Capitol symbolized the nation's unfinished business during the Civil War. The satin finish is one of the most important details of the example we're discussing. In 2009, the Mint produced special satin finish Lincoln cents as part of its uncirculated mint sets. These were not ordinary circulation strikes. The satin finish gave the coins a softer, more uniform appearance and helped distinguish them from regular business strike cents. The 2009 special mint set Lincoln cents were also notable because they used the older predominantly copper composition, making them especially interesting to collectors studying the transition in American cent production. The Mint sold approximately 771,204 2009 uncirculated mint sets, and the special satin finish Lincoln cents from those sets had a much lower mintage than the enormous numbers of regular 2009 circulation cents. PCGS has described these satin finish issues as unusually scarce modern Lincoln cents, with 784,014 recorded as the mintage for the individual 2009 satin finish designs. This limited production is one of the strongest reasons collectors pay attention to the special finish issues rather than treating every 2009 Lincoln cent as identical. The Denver Mint mark adds another important identification point. The United States Mint used both Philadelphia and Denver for the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial cents, and collectors often assemble complete sets containing each design from both facilities. A D-Mint example, therefore, represents the Denver version of the presidency design. When the coin also has the satin finish, it belongs to a much more specialized collecting category than an ordinary 2009 D penny found in pocket change. The condition described on our example is circulated and fine. That creates an interesting contrast because satin finish coins were originally sold in uncirculated mint sets. If a satin finish coin has genuine circulation wear, marks, dirt, or surface damage, its condition may be significantly lower than the finest surviving examples. Collectors generally prefer coins with original surfaces and minimal handling. However, condition does not erase the historical importance of the issue, and an authenticated special strike coin can still be an interesting addition to a modern Lincoln collection. The phrase large date also deserves some caution. Collectors sometimes use visual descriptions such as large date when a date appears different because of strike, wear, lighting, or comparison with another coin. A 2009 Lincoln cent should not automatically be assigned a major premium simply because the digits appear large. The more important questions are whether the coin is the correct bicentennial design, whether the D mint mark is genuine, whether the satin finish is authentic, and whether there is a documented mint error or recognized variety. Errors are another area that can change the story dramatically. A normal satin finish is not itself an error because it was intentionally produced by the mint, but a coin from the satin finish issue could potentially have a separate mint-made error, such as an off-center strike, wrong planche, double design, die problem, or another documented production anomaly. The error would need to be carefully examined and authenticated. Post-mint scratches, stains, corrosion, cleaning, and damage would not normally receive the same premium as a genuine mint error. Collectors also examine the edge, surfaces, lettering, and overall strike. Because satin finish coins were specially prepared, their appearance can help specialists distinguish them from ordinary circulation pieces. A coin that has been heavily cleaned may lose some of the visual characteristics collectors want. Dirt should not be confused with an error either. A dirty coin can simply reflect storage conditions, while a genuine mint-made defect should show evidence consistent with the manufacturing process. The historical story behind the presidency reverse makes this coin especially appealing. Lincoln became president in 1861, at a moment when the United States was breaking apart. His administration faced the Civil War, enormous political pressure, and the challenge of preserving the Union. The Capitol building shown on the coin represents more than a government structure. It symbolizes the nation Lincoln worked to preserve during a period of extraordinary uncertainty. The 2009 bicentennial program allowed the mint to tell that story through 4 small 1-cent coins. The first design focused on Lincoln's childhood in Kentucky. The second showed his formative years in Indiana. The third represented his professional life in Illinois. The fourth, our coin, represented his presidency. Together, the 4 designs created a miniature biography of Lincoln that millions of Americans could hold in their hands.
The 2009 Lincoln cents are also important because they mark the end of an era. The memorial reverse, introduced in 1959 for the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, had been used for half a century. In 2009, that chapter ended. The 4 bicentennial reverses appeared only during that year, and in 2010 the Mint introduced the Union Shield reverse. That makes the 2009 designs one-year type issues that will not be repeated in exactly the same form. The market tells us something important about this coin. Ordinary 2009 Lincoln cents are common, and even many uncirculated examples are inexpensive. The special satin finish pieces are different because their production was restricted to the Mint set program. PCGS auction records show that 2009 D satin finish presidency cents have sold for relatively modest amounts in certified grades, with examples reaching tens of dollars rather than hundreds of thousands. This means a normal satin finish 2009 D presidency cent is not realistically a 600,000 coin in today's market. However, if we are discussing an extraordinary hypothetical specimen with a major authenticated mint error, in addition to the satin finish, the situation could be dramatically different. For the purposes of this video, an ambitious high-end collector target of around 612,000 could be discussed only for an exceptionally rare, professionally certified error specimen that combines the scarce satin finish issue with a truly significant production mistake and extraordinary collector demand. This is not the established auction value of an ordinary circulated 2009 D satin finish penny. That distinction is extremely important for anyone watching this video. A headline value should never be applied to every coin with the same date. The ordinary 2009 D presidency cent and the special satin finish issue are different collecting categories, and a coin with post-mint damage is different again. The market pays large premiums when rarity is proven, not simply because a coin looks unusual or has an exciting description. If you own a 2009 D Lincoln presidency cent, begin by checking the reverse design. Look for the Capitol building and compare it with the other 3 2009 bicentennial reverses. Then examine the mint mark, surface texture, and overall appearance. If the coin appears to have the characteristic satin finish, it may be worth separating from ordinary pennies. If you believe it contains a genuine mint error, avoid cleaning it and have the coin evaluated by a qualified professional. The 2009 Lincoln Memorial Presidency cent may be modern compared with classic wheat cents, but it still represents an important chapter in United States coinage. It celebrates Lincoln's presidency, closes the 50-year Memorial Reverse era, and belongs to a limited satin finish issue that many casual collectors may overlook. That combination of history, limited production, and possible mint errors is what keeps specialists interested in these coins. And that is why this 2009 D Lincoln cent deserves a closer look. It may not be valuable simply because it is old, but its connection to the Lincoln Bicentennial, its special finish, its limited mint set production, and the possibility of an authenticated error can make it a fascinating modern collectible. Before you spend a 2009 penny or place it back into a jar, check the reverse, look for the D mint mark, study the surface, and make sure you know exactly which version you have. One more detail can make a major difference when comparing examples.